The box of chocolates sat on my nightstand, a silent reminder of another Valentine's Day spent alone. I traced my finger along the gold-embossed lettering, savoring the bittersweet irony. For the past 5 years, I'd gifted myself these decadent treats, a secret rebellion against my husband's perpetual forgetfulness. "Clara?" Daniel's voice echoed from downstairs. "Have you seen my phone?" I sighed, pushing myself off the bed. "Coming, dear." As I descended the stairs, I caught sight of Daniel frantically patting his pockets, his brow furrowed in concentration. It was a familiar scene, one that had played out countless times over our 7-year marriage. "Did you check the coffee table?" I asked, my voice tinged with forced patience. Daniel's eyes lit up. "Ah, there it is!" He snatched the device, clutching it to his chest like a precious artifact. I frowned, a niggling sense of unease creeping up my spine. "You've been awfully attached to that thing lately. Everything okay at work?" His shoulders tensed, almost imperceptibly. "Just busy, that's all. You know how it is." But I didn't know. Not anymore. There was a time when Daniel would share every detail of his day, no matter how mundane. Now he was a closed book, and I was running out of ways to pry it open. "I was thinking," I ventured, desperate to bridge the growing chasm between us, "maybe we could go out for dinner tonight? That new Italian place downtown looks nice." Daniel's eyes darted to his phone, then back to me. "Oh, I can't tonight. I've got a work thing." "A work thing? On Valentine's Day?" He shrugged, not meeting my gaze. "You know how it is in accounting, numbers don't take holidays." I bit back a retort, forcing a smile instead. "Of course. Maybe another time." As Daniel hurried out the door, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I'd spent years convincing myself that his forgetfulness and emotional distance were just quirks, part of the package I'd signed up for when I said I do. But now, watching him cradle that phone like a lifeline, I wondered if I'd been fooling myself all along. My phone buzzed, startling me out of my reverie. It was a text from my best friend, Maggie. "Happy V-Day, Han! How's Loverboy treating you?" I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. How could I explain the knot in my stomach, the growing certainty that my marriage was unraveling thread by thread? Instead, I typed, same old, you know Daniel." Maggie's response was immediate. "Girl, you deserve better than same old. Want to grab a drink later? I'll be your Valentine." I smiled, grateful for the offer. "Thanks, but I think I'll stay in. Romantic night with Netflix and my chocolates." "Suit yourself, but if you change your mind, I'm here." I set the phone down, my gaze drifting to the mantel where our wedding photo sat. We looked so happy, so in love. When had that changed? And more importantly, why hadn't I noticed? Determined to shake off my melancholy, I headed to the kitchen. If Daniel wouldn't celebrate with me, I'd make my own damn romantic dinner. I was elbow-deep in pasta dough when I heard it, the distinct ping of a text message. Wiping my hands, I reached for my phone, but it was silent. The sound had come from Daniel's phone, forgotten on the counter in his rush to leave. I shouldn't look. I knew I shouldn't. But as another ping echoed through the kitchen, my resolve crumbled. With trembling fingers, I picked up the device. The screen lit up, revealing a string of messages from someone named Audrey. My heart pounded as I read the words that would change everything. "Can't wait to see you tonight, baby. Happy 3-month anniversary." The phone slipped from my grasp, clattering to the floor. As I stood there surrounded by the remnants of my abandoned dinner plans, I realized that the life I thought I knew was nothing but a carefully constructed lie. And in that moment, as the weight of betrayal settled over me like a shroud, I made a decision. Daniel may have forgotten what day it was, but I wouldn't. This Valentine's Day would be one neither of us would ever forget. I couldn't sleep that night, my mind racing with questions and doubts. The image of those text messages burned behind my eyelids every time I closed them. When morning came, I was exhausted but determined to find answers. Daniel stumbled into the kitchen, bleary-eyed and disheveled. "Morning, honey," he mumbled, reaching for the coffee pot. I watched him carefully, searching for any sign of guilt or remorse. "Late night?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. He nodded, not meeting my eyes. "Yeah, work's been crazy lately." "I bet," I muttered under my breath. As Daniel fumbled with his tie, I noticed his phone on the counter. My fingers itched to grab it, to search for more evidence of his betrayal. But before I could make a move, he snatched it up, shoving it into his pocket. Gotta run, he said, planting a quick kiss on my cheek. Don't wait up tonight. I might be late again. The door closed behind him, and I was left alone with my suspicions and a half-empty pot of coffee. I spent the day in a fog, going through the motions at work while my mind churned with possibilities. Was it just a fling? Had he fallen in love with this Audrey? And how long had it been going on? By the time I got home, I was a bundle of nerves. I paced the living room, rehearsing what I'd say when Daniel walked through the door, but as the hours ticked by, my anger gave way to worry. At midnight, I couldn't take it anymore. I dialed Daniel's number, my heart pounding with each ring. Hello? His voice was muffled, distant. Daniel, where are you? It's past midnight. There was a pause, then a rustling sound. Oh, Clara, I'm sorry, I lost track of time. I'm still at the office. In the background, I heard a woman's laugh, quickly stifled. Are you sure about that? I asked, my voice trembling. Of course, he said, too quickly. Look, I've got to go. I'll see you in the morning. The line went dead, and I stared at the phone in disbelief. He hadn't even tried to hide it. I spent the rest of the night alternating between rage and despair. By morning, I had made up my mind. I wouldn't confront him yet. Not until I had irrefutable proof. When Daniel came home, looking rumpled and guilty, I pretended everything was fine. I smiled and nodded as he spun a tale about a late-night audit and computer problems. You must be exhausted, I said, laying it on thick. Why don't you go take a nap? I'll wake you for dinner. Relief flooded his face. Thanks, honey. You're the best. As soon as I heard his snores from upstairs, I pounced on his briefcase. My hands shook as I rifled through papers and receipts. Nothing incriminating, but then my fingers brushed against something smooth and silky. I pulled out a scrap of fabric, lacy, black, and definitely not mine. The lingerie tag was still attached, bearing yesterday's date. My vision blurred with tears as I clutched the damning evidence. How could he do this to me? To us? Just then, Daniel's phone buzzed on the coffee table. Without thinking, I grabbed it, my thumb hovering over the home button. This was my chance to know for sure. But did I really want to see what was on that screen? Could our marriage survive if I went down this rabbit hole? As if in answer, another message came through. The preview popped up, shattering any last shred of doubt. Last night was amazing, baby. Can't wait for our weekend getaway. Audrey. I sank to the floor, the phone clutched to my chest. The Daniel I thought I knew was gone, replaced by a stranger who lied as easily as he breathed. Upstairs, I heard him stirring. In a few moments, he'd come down, ready to spin more lies. But this time, I'd be ready. With shaking hands, I opened his phone and started taking screenshots. If Daniel wanted to play games, fine. But he was about to learn that two could play, and I played to win. I woke up on the morning of our third wedding anniversary with a mix of hope and dread churning in my stomach. Despite everything, a part of me still clung to the belief that Daniel would remember, that he'd surprise me with flowers or a romantic gesture. I spent hours preparing a special dinner, Daniel's favorite pot roast, simmering in the slow cooker, filling the house with a savory aroma. I even bought a new dress, a deep burgundy number that hugged my curves in all the right places. As the sun began to set, I lit candles and uncorked a bottle of wine. The table was set, the mood perfect. All that was missing was my husband. 7 o'clock came and went. Then 8. By 9, the pot roast was dry, the candles had burned low, and my patience had worn thin. I called Daniel's cell, but it went straight to voicemail. Hey, it's me, I said, trying to keep the hurt out of my voice. Just wondering where you are. It's our anniversary, remember? Midnight found me curled up on the couch, still in my new dress, clutching a nearly empty wine bottle. The sound of keys in the lock jolted me awake. Daniel stumbled in, his tie askew and his eyes unfocused. Clara? He slurred. What are you still doing up? I stood, swaying slightly. What am I doing up? What are you doing coming home at midnight on our anniversary? He blinked, confusion clouding his features. Anniversary? That's not until... His voice trailed off as realization dawned. Oh, God, Clara, I'm so sorry. I completely forgot. Clearly, I spat, the hurt and anger of the past few weeks bubbling to the surface. Too busy with your work things, right? Daniel stepped closer, and that's when I smelled it. A cloying, floral scent that most definitely wasn't mine. Is that perfume? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He paled, taking a step back. What? No, it's probably just from the office. You know how Susan overdoes it with the air freshener? Don't lie to me, Daniel, I said, my hands clenching into fists. I'm not stupid. I know something's going on. Clara, please, he pleaded. You're overreacting. I just had a few drinks with the guys after work. I lost track of time. That's all. I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to believe him. But the evidence was piling up, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. Then why have you been so secretive with your phone? I challenged. Why are you always working late? And don't tell me it's just work, because I know that's not true. Daniel's face hardened. Have you been spying on me? I shouldn't have to spy on my own husband, I shouted, tears stinging my eyes. You're supposed to be honest with me. You promised, remember, for better or for worse? He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every line of his body. I don't want to do this now, Clara. I'm tired and you're clearly upset. Let's talk in the morning when we've both had some sleep. No, I said, planting myself between him and the stairs. We're going to talk about this now. I want the truth, Daniel. Are you having an affair? The silence that followed was deafening. Daniel's eyes darted around the room, looking anywhere but at me, and in that moment, I knew. The truth I'd been desperately trying to deny was written all over his face. Who is she? I whispered, my voice breaking. Daniel's shoulders slumped in defeat. Clara, I. But before he could finish, his phone buzzed in his pocket. Without thinking, he pulled it out, glancing at the screen. I caught a glimpse of the name before he could hide it. Audrey. It's her, isn't it? I said, a strange calm settling over me. Audrey, your little 3-month anniversary girl. Daniel's head snapped up, shock and guilt warring on his face. How did you? It doesn't matter. I cut him off. What matters is that you've been lying to me, cheating on me, and I want to know why. As I stood there facing the man I thought I knew, I realized our marriage would never be the same. The question was, did I even want to save it anymore? The morning after our anniversary disaster, I woke up with a pounding headache and a heart full of resolve. I'd spent the night on the couch, unable to bear the thought of lying next to Daniel. As I heard him stirring upstairs, I steeled myself for the confrontation to come. Daniel shuffled into the kitchen, looking as wrecked as I felt. Clara, he began, his voice hoarse. About last night? I held up a hand, silencing him. Save it, Daniel. I don't want to hear any more excuses or lies. He slumped into a chair, running his hands through his disheveled hair. What do you want me to say? The truth, I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. All of it, starting with who Audrey is. Daniel's head snapped up, his eyes wide with shock. How do you know about Audrey? Does it matter? I countered. What matters is that you've been lying to me, sneaking around behind my back. I want to know why. He sighed, defeat etched into every line of his face. It just happened. Audrey's new at the office. She's young, exciting. She made me feel alive again. Each word was a dagger to my heart. But I refused to let him see how much he was hurting me. And I don't make you feel alive? What about our vows, Daniel? What about the life we built together? I know, he said, his voice cracking. I messed up, Clara. I'm so sorry. It won't happen again, I promise. Just, please, give me another chance. I wanted to believe him. Part of me longed to forgive him, to pretend this was all a bad dream. But the larger part, the part that had been silently screaming for months, what knew better? How can I trust you? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. How do I know you won't do this again? Daniel reached for my hand, but I pulled away. I'll do whatever it takes, he pleaded. Counseling, an open phone policy, anything. Just don't give up on us. I stood up, needing to put some distance between us. I need time to think, I said, and I need proof that you're serious about fixing this. He nodded eagerly. Of course, anything. What do you need? Your phone, Dad, I said, holding out my hand. I want to see everything. Daniel hesitated, his hand instinctively moving to his pocket. Clara, I don't think that's... If you have nothing to hide, then it shouldn't be a problem, I interrupted, my patience wearing thin. With visible reluctance, he handed over the device. My hands shook as I unlocked it, dreading what I might find. The evidence was there, plain as day. Hundreds of messages, each one more intimate than the last. Photos that made my stomach churn. Plans for romantic getaways, all while I sat at home, wondering where my husband was. 3 months, I said, my voice hollow. You've been lying to me for 3 months. Daniel started to speak, but I cut him off. Don't. There's nothing you can say to make this right. I scrolled through the messages, each one adding fuel to the fire of my anger and hurt. And then I saw it, a conversation from just this morning. Audrey, last night was amazing. When can I see you again? Daniel, soon, baby. I just need to figure out how to handle Clara. The phone slipped from my grasp, clattering to the floor. Daniel lunged for it, but I was faster. Handle me? I spat, fury coursing through my veins. Is that what I am to you now? A problem to be handled? Clara, please, Daniel begged. It's not what it looks like. I was going to end it with Audrey, I swear. But I was done listening to his lies. In that moment, I made a decision that would change everything. Get out, I said, my voice cold and firm. Pack a bag and get out of this house. I don't care where you go, but you can't stay here. Daniel's face crumpled. Clara, don't do this. We can work it out. I shook my head, a strange calm settling over me. No, Daniel, we can't. Not anymore. As I watched him trudge upstairs to pack, I realized this was just the beginning. The life I thought I knew was over, but a new chapter was about to begin, one where I would no longer be a victim of Daniel's lies and betrayal. The house felt eerily quiet after Daniel left. I wandered from room to room, my mind racing with questions and doubts. Had I made the right decision? Was this really the end of our marriage? I found myself in our bedroom, staring at the photos on the dresser. Happy memories now tainted by betrayal. With trembling hands, I picked up Daniel's phone, which he'd left behind in his haste to leave. I knew I shouldn't, but I couldn't help myself. I had to know everything. For hours, I pored over every message, every photo, every scrap of evidence of Daniel's infidelity. Each discovery was like a knife to my heart, but I couldn't stop. I needed to understand the full extent of his betrayal. As night fell, I stumbled upon a conversation that made my blood run cold. Daniel, I can't wait for our anniversary dinner next week. Audrey, me too, baby. 3 whole months. Who would have thought? Daniel, it's been the best 3 months of my life. I love you, Audrey. I felt the air leave my lungs. Love? He loved her? The phone slipped from my grasp, clattering to the floor. In a daze, I made my way to the kitchen, pulling out a bottle of wine I'd been saving for a special occasion. As I poured a glass with shaking hands, my eyes fell on the calendar hanging on the fridge. There, circled in red, was next Friday's date. Exactly 3 months from when Daniel's behavior had first changed. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. While I'd been planning our wedding anniversary dinner, Daniel had been planning a celebration of his affair. Fury coursed through my veins, replacing the hurt and confusion. How dare he? How dare they? Before I knew what I was doing, I found myself back at Daniel's phone, scrolling through his messages with renewed purpose. I wasn't just gathering evidence anymore. I was forming a plan. I discovered the name of the restaurant where they planned to have their anniversary dinner. It was an upscale place downtown, one Daniel and I had always talked about trying but never got around to. As I dug deeper, I uncovered more details about their relationship. Audrey was 24, barely out of college. She worked in Daniel's department, a new hire he'd been mentoring. They'd been meeting for lunch dates, stolen moments in the office, and weekend getaways disguised as business trips. Each new piece of information fueled my determination. I wouldn't let them get away with this. I wouldn't be the fool they clearly thought I was. With newfound resolve, I picked up my own phone and dialed a number. Maggie, it's Clara. I need your help. My best friend listened in shocked silence as I poured out the whole sordid tale. When I finished, there was a moment of quiet before she spoke. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. What can I do? I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I was about to say. I need you to help me crash their anniversary dinner. What? Maggie gasped. Clara, are you sure that's a good idea? No, I admitted, but I need to do this. I need to see it for myself, to confront them both. Will you help me? There was a pause, and for a moment I feared she'd refuse. But then, of course I will. What's the plan? Relief washed over me. I'm not sure yet, but I know I can't do this alone. Can you come over tomorrow? We can figure it out together. I'll be there first thing in the morning, Maggie promised. And Clara, we're going to get through this. You're stronger than you know. As I hung up the phone, I felt a strange mix of emotions, anger, hurt, fear, but also a glimmer of something else. Hope, maybe, or determination. Whatever it was, I knew one thing for certain. Next Friday night, Daniel and Audrey's perfect little world was going to come crashing down, and I would be there to watch it burn. I picked up Daniel's phone one last time, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. After a moment's hesitation, I typed out a message to Audrey. "Can't wait for our anniversary, baby. I have a big surprise planned." I hit send, a grim smile playing on my lips. Oh, it would be a surprise, all right. Just not the one they were expecting. My heart pounded as I stepped into the dimly lit restaurant, Maggie close behind me. We'd spent the past week planning this moment, and now that it was here, I felt a mix of terror and exhilaration. "Are you sure about this?" Maggie whispered, squeezing my arm. I nodded, scanning the room. "I have to do this. I need answers." And there they were, in a cozy corner booth. Daniel, looking more relaxed than I'd seen him in months, leaning in close to a young woman with cascading blonde hair. "Audrey." "That's them," I breathed, my legs suddenly feeling weak. Maggie steadied me. "Remember the plan. You've got this, Clara." Taking a deep breath, I straightened my spine and strode towards their table, Maggie following discreetly behind. As I approached, I heard Audrey's tinkling laugh, saw Daniel's hand resting on hers. They were so engrossed in each other, they didn't notice me until I was right beside them. "Well, isn't this cozy?" I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Daniel's head snapped up, his face draining of color. "Clara, what are you doing here?" Audrey looked between us, confusion clouding her features. "Daniel, who is this?" I smiled, cold and sharp. "I'm his wife, and you must be the woman he's been screwing behind my back for the past 3 months. The shock on Audrey's face would have been comical if the situation weren't so painful. "Wife, you told me you were separated." Daniel stood abruptly, nearly knocking over his wine glass. "Clara, please, let's not do this here." "Why not?" I challenged, my voice rising. "Afraid of making a scene? Afraid people might find out what a lying, cheating bastard you are?" Heads were turning now, curious diners watching the drama unfold. I didn't care. Let them watch. Let them see the truth. Audrey stood too, grabbing her purse. "I can't believe this. You lied to me, Daniel, to both of us." "Audrey, wait," Daniel pleaded, reaching for her arm. But she jerked away, her eyes flashing with anger. "Don't touch me," she spat. "You told me you loved me, that we had a future together." I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Oh, honey, he told me the same thing 7 years ago when he put this ring on my finger." Daniel's eyes darted between us, panic etched on his face. "Please, both of you, can we just go somewhere private and talk about this?" "There's nothing to talk about," I said, my voice ice cold. "You made your choice, Daniel. Now you get to live with the consequences." I turned to Audrey, who looked close to tears. "He's all yours, sweetheart, but a word of advice, don't believe a word he says." As I turned to leave, Daniel grabbed my arm. "Clara, wait, I'm sorry. I never meant for this to happen. I love you." Something inside me snapped. All the hurt, the anger, the betrayal of the past months came rushing to the surface. Before I knew what I was doing, my hand connected with his cheek in a resounding slap. The restaurant fell silent. Daniel staggered back, his hand to his face, shock written all over his features. "Don't you dare," I hissed. "Don't you dare say you love me after everything you've done." Maggie appeared at my side, her arm around my shoulders. "Come on, Clara, let's go." As she led me away, I heard Audrey's voice, thick with emotion. "Is it true, Daniel? Have you been lying to me this whole time?" I didn't stay to hear his response. I'd heard enough lies to last a lifetime. Outside, the cool night air hit my face, and I finally let the tears fall. Maggie held me as I sobbed, my body shaking with the force of my grief. "It's over," I whispered. "It's really over." Maggie squeezed me tighter. "No, honey, it's not over. It's just beginning. You're free now." As we walked away from the restaurant, leaving behind the shattered remains of my marriage, I realized Maggie was right. This wasn't the end. It was a new beginning. And for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope for the future. But first, I had one more thing to do. One final confrontation that would decide the course of the rest of my life. The morning after the restaurant confrontation, I woke to the sound of someone pounding on my front door. My head throbbed, a reminder of the bottle of wine I'd shared with Maggie after our dramatic exit. I stumbled downstairs, half expecting to see Daniel begging for forgiveness. Instead, I found Audrey on my doorstep, her eyes red-rimmed and her hair disheveled. "We need to talk," she said, pushing past me into the house. I closed the door, my mind racing. What's there to talk about? I think we both know the truth now. Audrey whirled to face me, her expression a mix of anger and desperation. Did you know? All this time, did you know about us? I shook my head, feeling a strange pity for this young woman who'd been just as deceived as I had. I only found out recently, but I suspect you didn't know about me either. She collapsed onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. He told me you were separated, that he was planning to leave you for me. The words hit me like a physical blow. I sank into the armchair across from her, my legs suddenly weak. He what? Audrey looked up, her eyes brimming with tears. He said he loved me, that we were going to start a life together. A hysterical laugh bubbled up in my throat. Oh, honey, he's been saying that to me for 7 years. We sat in silence for a moment, two women united in their betrayal by the same man. Then Audrey spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. What do we do now? Before I could answer, the front door burst open. Daniel stood there, his face haggard, his eyes wild. Clara, please, we need to talk, he pleaded. Then he saw Audrey and froze. What's going on here? I stood, feeling a strange calm settle over me. What's going on, Daniel? Is that your lies are finally catching up with you? He stepped into the room, his gaze darting between Audrey and me. I can explain. I never meant to hurt either of you. But you did, Audrey said, rising to stand beside me. You hurt us both. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, his desperation palpable. I know, I messed up. But Clara, you have to believe me. I love you. I want to make this work. I felt Audrey stiffen beside me. What about me? She demanded. You said you loved me too. Daniel's face crumpled. I do. I love you both. I can't choose. The room fell silent. I looked at Daniel, really looked at him for the first time in months. I saw the man I'd fallen in love with, the man I'd built a life with. But I also saw the liar, the cheater, the man who'd broken my heart. In that moment, I made my decision. You don't have to choose, Daniel, I said, my voice steady. Because I'm choosing for you. I want a divorce. Daniel's face went pale. Clara, no, please, we can work this out. I shook my head, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. No, we can't. You've made your bed, Daniel. Now you can lie in it. I turned to Audrey, who was watching the exchange with wide eyes. He's all yours if you want him, but remember, once a cheater, always a cheater. Audrey looked at Daniel, then back at me. To my surprise, she shook her head. No, I deserve better than this. We both do. As if on cue, we both moved towards the front door. Daniel stood frozen, watching as we prepared to walk out of his life. Wait, he called, his voice breaking. What am I supposed to do now? I paused at the threshold, looking back at the man I'd once loved more than anything in the world. That's not our problem anymore, Daniel. It's yours. With that, Audrey and I stepped out into the sunlight, leaving Daniel alone in the house that had once been our home. As we walked down the driveway, I felt a strange mix of sadness and liberation. What now? Audrey asked, echoing her earlier question. I took a deep breath, feeling the first stirrings of hope in my chest. Now we start over. Both of us. As we walked away from my old life, I realized that this wasn't just an ending. It was a beginning. And for the first time in a long time, I was excited to see what the future held. 1 year after that fateful day when Audrey and I walked away from Daniel, I stood in front of the mirror, barely recognizing the woman staring back at me. Gone was the insecure, heartbroken shell I'd become. In her place stood a confident, vibrant woman ready to take on the world. The divorce had been finalized 6 months ago, surprisingly smooth given the circumstances. Daniel, perhaps out of guilt or a genuine desire to make amends, hadn't contested any of my demands. The alimony was generous, giving me the financial freedom to pursue a dream I'd long forgotten. My aromatherapy business, Essence of Clara, was thriving. What had started as a hobby to distract myself from the pain of betrayal had blossomed into a successful venture. The scents I created told stories of healing, growth, and self-discovery, my own journey bottled for others to experience. As I applied a dab of my latest creation, a blend of lavender, rosemary, and citrus that I'd named New Beginnings, my phone buzzed with a text from Maggie. Ready for your big night? Can't wait to see you shine. I smiled, feeling a flutter of excitement in my stomach. Tonight was the grand opening of my first brick-and-mortar store. It felt like the culmination of everything I'd been through, a testament to my resilience and growth. As I drove to the store, I couldn't help but reflect on the twists and turns that had led me here. The pain of Daniel's betrayal had been excruciating, but it had also been the catalyst for my transformation. In losing him, I'd found myself. The store was already buzzing with activity when I arrived. Friends, family, and loyal customers milled about, admiring the displays and sampling the products. Maggie rushed over, enveloping me in a warm hug. "Clara, this place is amazing. I'm so proud of you." I squeezed her back, feeling a lump form in my throat. "I couldn't have done it without you." As I made my way through the crowd, greeting guests and answering questions about my products, I caught sight of a familiar face. Audrey stood near the back, looking uncertain. Our eyes met, and after a moment's hesitation, I walked over to her. "I wasn't sure if I should come," she said, fidgeting with her purse strap, "but I wanted to see how you were doing." I smiled, surprising myself with the genuine warmth I felt towards her. "I'm glad you did. How are you?" We chatted for a few minutes, and I learned that Audrey had gone back to school, pursuing a degree in social work. Like me, she'd found a way to turn her pain into purpose. As the night wore on and the crowd thinned, I found myself alone in the store, savoring the moment. I ran my hand along the shelves, each bottle a reminder of how far I'd come. A knock at the door startled me from my reverie. I turned to see Daniel standing outside, a bouquet of flowers in his hand. For a moment, I froze, old feelings of hurt and anger threatening to surface. But as I looked at him, really looked at him, I realized something profound. The sight of him no longer had any power over me. I opened the door, accepting the flowers with a polite smile. "Thank you, Daniel. They're lovely." He shifted uncomfortably, his eyes taking in the store. "This place is incredible, Clara. You've done amazing things." "I have," I agreed, feeling a surge of pride. We stood in awkward silence for a moment before Daniel spoke again. "I'm sorry for everything. I know it doesn't change anything, but I needed you to know that." I nodded, feeling a sense of closure wash over me. "Thank you for saying that. I hope you find happiness, Daniel. I really do." As he turned to leave, I called out, "Daniel?" He paused, looking back at me. "I forgive you," I said, the words feeling right as they left my lips. "Not for you, but for me. I'm ready to let go of the past and embrace my future." The look of gratitude and relief on his face was palpable. With a final nod, he walked away, taking the last vestiges of my old life with him. I locked up the store, feeling lighter than I had in years. As I drove home, I realized that all of this, was just the beginning. I had faced betrayal, heartbreak, and despair, and I had emerged stronger, wiser, and more authentically myself than ever before. Tomorrow, I would wake up and gift myself a box of those high-end chocolates, but this time they wouldn't be a consolation prize or a secret rebellion. They would be a celebration of my strength, my resilience, and the beautiful independent woman I had become. As I drifted off to sleep that night, I smiled, excited for the first time in years about what the future might hold. My story wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. And I couldn't wait to see where it would take me next.